Los Angeles glitters at dusk. Glass towers catch the fading sun. Red taillights paint the freeways in rivers of fire, and neon signs hum to life. To the world, the city looks like endless possibility. To Alexander Cole, billionaire investor, it looks like a cage of glass and gold. He sits in the back of his Blacktown car, scrolling through emails, stock tickers, mergers, endless zeros trailing across his screen. Yet none of it fills the silence inside him. His driver clears his throat. "Sir, this will be my last week," the man says cautiously. "Family needs me out of state." Alexander looks up, startled. "Last week?" "Yes, sir. I'm sorry." Alexander leans back, exhaling. Another vacancy, another role to fill, another cog in the machine. He nods absently. Understood. But that night, fate waits for him on a quiet street. The next day, his schedule drags him to a luxury auto showroom, one of many companies in his portfolio. He shakes hands with managers, inspects numbers, pretends interest in chrome and horsepower. But as he leaves, something catches his eye. Across the street, near the corner of a used car lot, sits a man. Black, mid-40s, beard flecked with gray. His clothes are worn, his shoes scuffed, a duffel bag at his side. He leans against a fence, eyes sharp despite the weariness in his frame. Alexander pauses. Something about the man holds him. Not pity, not curiosity. Recognition, though he cannot place it. The man notices his gaze and straightens. Dignity in his posture despite his condition. Later that week, Alexander passes again. The man is still there, always in the same spot, sitting quietly, never begging. He watches traffic, lost in thought. This time, Alexander crosses the street. His security detail stiffens, but he waves them back. "You've been here all week," Alexander says. The man nods calmly. "Just looking for work." Alexander studies him. "What kind of work?" "Driving." The man answers simply. The word hits like a chord. A vacancy, a need, a chance. Alexander narrows his eyes. "You're a driver?" The man nods again. "Been one all my life. Buses, delivery trucks, cabs. If it's got wheels, I've handled it." Alexander crosses his arms. "And now?" The man shrugs. "Now I'm just trying to start over." Silence stretches between them. The city hums, horns blare, neon flickers. Something compels Alexander. A memory of his wife's favorite verse drifts into his mind, though he hasn't thought of it in years. "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some have entertained angels without knowing it." Hebrews 13 verse 2. He clears his throat. "What's your name?" The man meets his gaze steadily. "David." Alexander hesitates only a moment. "Come to my office tomorrow, 9 sharp. Let's see if you can drive for me." David blinks, surprised, but he nods. "Yes, sir." As Alexander walks away, his security officer murmurs, "You sure about this, sir?" Hiring off the street. Alexander's lips press into a line. Sometimes the street has what the boardroom doesn't. He doesn't know why he said it. He doesn't know why he felt it. But something deep inside whispers, this decision will change everything. And he has no idea how true that is. Morning light sharpens the glass towers of downtown Los Angeles. The Mercer and Cole building rises among them like a fortress. Tinted windows, polished marble, men in suits striding briskly through revolving doors. Inside, everything gleams with wealth and precision. But as the clock nears 9, security at the front desk stiffens. A man steps in, carrying nothing but a worn duffel bag. His clothes are clean but faded, his shoes patched. He carries himself not with desperation, but with a calm dignity that unsettles those who measure worth in labels and brands. "Name?" the receptionist asks sharply. "David Johnson," he replies evenly. "I'm expected." The receptionist frowns, but before she can dismiss him, Alexander Cole appears from the elevator lobby. Sharp suit, unreadable face. His executives whisper as he crosses the floor. Alexander nods once at David. "Come?" Murmurs ripple. A billionaire escorting a homeless man upstairs? But Alexander doesn't pause. In his private office, sunlight pours across glass walls and sleek steel. Alexander gestures to a chair. David sits, posture straight, eyes steady. You came, Alexander says. You asked, David replies. Alexander leans back, studying him. Why driving? With your situation, there must be other work. David's voice is steady. Because when I'm behind the wheel, I know who I am. Doesn't matter what's in my pockets. The road listens to everyone the same. The words strike Alexander with surprising weight. He clears his throat. Tell me your experience. David lists calmly. Years with the city bus system, late nights driving delivery trucks, cab work, freelance gigs. His memory for routes, his caution in storms, his ability to read traffic like a book. Alexander listens, surprised. Nothing flashy, no boasting, just competence, discipline, endurance. Finally, Alexander asks, Why are you homeless? David hesitates, then answers plainly. Life took things from me faster than I could replace them. Lost a job, then a home. Been clawing back ever since. Alexander studies him. No excuses, no self-pity, just fact. He tests him. Suppose I'm running late for a board meeting across town. Streets are jammed. How do you get me there? David closes his eyes briefly, picturing the map of Los Angeles in his head. Surface streets eastbound, cut through Temple down to 2nd, then back on the 110 by the hospital. 15 minutes faster. 20 if there's a wreck. Alexander raises an eyebrow. And if there's police? David opens his eyes. Then you pay the ticket and fire me. But you'll make the meeting. A chuckle almost escapes Alexander, the first in days. Silence stretches. Alexander knows the risks. His board would howl. The media would feast. His staff would whisper. A billionaire hiring a homeless man off the street? Madness. But Eleanor's verse drifts through his memory again. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some have entertained angels without knowing it. He exhales slowly. You start tomorrow. David blinks. That's it. That's it. David rises, extending a hand. Alexander shakes it, firm, steady. By evening, the mansion's garage holds a new presence. David, dressed in a spare uniform tailored in haste, inspecting the sleek black town car as though it were his own. Alexander watches from the balcony, heart pounding with a mix of doubt and curiosity. He doesn't know this man, doesn't know his past, doesn't know why he feels drawn to trust him. But something whispers that this choice, reckless, absurd, inexplicable, is the beginning of a truth long hidden. A truth that, once revealed, will change everything. The first morning is quiet. David waits in the driveway, crisp uniform pressed, the black town car gleaming. He stands at attention as Alexander exits the mansion, briefcase in hand. Morning, sir, David says simply. Alexander nods curtly and slides into the back seat. The door shuts with a soft click. For a long while, only the hum of the engine fills the air. David drives with steady precision, eyes scanning mirrors, hands relaxed but sure. Alexander pretends to scroll through emails, but his gaze drifts to the man at the wheel. Homeless yet calm, poor yet dignified. Who is he really? By the third ride, Alexander breaks the silence. Where'd you learn to drive like that? David keeps his eyes on the road. Started on my uncle's truck when I was 12. He said, if you can handle a gear shift on a hill, you can handle anything. Alexander almost smiles. And could you? David chuckles. Rolled backwards once, scared him half to death. But I learned quick. The laughter is brief but real. For the first time, Alexander feels the ice crack between them. Over the following weeks, snippets of conversation thread their drives. Alexander asks, do you always remember every turn? Every shortcut? David nods. The road talks if you listen. People rush, honk, curse. But the road tells you where to go if you're patient. Alexander tilts his head. You sound more like a philosopher than a driver. David shrugs. The road is life, full of jams, exits, detours. You just gotta keep steering. The words linger with Alexander long after the ride ends. One afternoon, rain pours over Los Angeles, snarling traffic. Alexander checks his watch anxiously. A critical negotiation awaits across town. "Sir, I'll get you there," David assures, weaving calmly through backstreets, avoiding bottlenecks as if he can see around corners. Somehow, they arrive with 5 minutes to spare. Alexander stares, astonished. "How did you?" David shrugs with a small smile. "You learn to read storms when you've lived in them." The words strike deeper than traffic. Alexander feels his chest tighten. Outside the car, whispers grow. Executives side-eye David in the lobby. Staff murmur about the homeless driver. Alexander notices, but when someone asks pointedly, "Why him?" he replies flatly, "Because he's the best." Still, doubt gnaws at him. Why does he trust David? One late evening, after a long day, Alexander sighs heavily in the back seat. David glances in the mirror. Rough one. Alexander exhales. Contracts, politics, endless talking. Everyone wants something. David is quiet a moment, then says softly, "Sometimes people don't need something from you. Sometimes they just need you." Alexander looks up, startled. No one speaks to him that way, not staff, not partners, not even friends. The words lodge in his heart. Gradually, routines shift. David opens the door not with robotic stiffness, but with quiet respect. He remembers Alexander's coffee order, keeps a spare umbrella, notices when silence is needed and when conversation helps. Alexander, in turn, asks about his life. "Where'd you grow up?" "South Side," David answers. "Mama worked 2 jobs. Taught me respect's worth more than money." "Family?" Alexander presses. David's gaze hardens briefly. Some gone, some lost, some waiting. The silence that follows is heavy, but Alexander doesn't push. He knows what it is to lose. The mansion staff notice changes. "Mr. Cole actually laughed in the car today," one whispers. "With him?" Another asks incredulously. "Yes, like, really laughed." The rumor spreads. The stranger behind the wheel is softening the billionaire's edges. One Saturday, Alexander insists David join him for breakfast at a small diner instead of waiting outside. David resists. "It's not proper." Alexander waves him in. "You're not just a driver. Sit." Over pancakes and coffee, conversation flows easier. Alexander finds himself talking about Eleanor, his late wife, her love of scripture, her laughter. David listens quietly, nodding, never pitying. When Alexander falls silent, David murmurs, "Sounds like she fed more than your stomach. She fed your soul." Alexander blinks back tears. The words echo Eleanor's own. That evening, alone in his study, Alexander recalls the verse Eleanor loved. "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some have entertained angels without knowing it." He whispers into the empty room, "Eleanor, is that what I'm doing?" The fire crackles, but no answer comes. Only the faint memory of David's steady voice, guiding him through storms. The weeks pass. The city rolls by in endless highways, alleys, and glittering skylines. But in the quiet of the car, something deeper grows. Alexander notices details he cannot explain. One night, they're driving back from a late gala. The freeway hums, neon lights streak across the windshield. Alexander drifts half asleep when David hums softly at the wheel. The melody jolts Alexander awake. It's faint, almost unconscious, but familiar. A hymn. Alexander's breath catches. "Where did you learn that?" David glances in the mirror. "My mama sang it, especially when things were hard." Alexander swallows. "Eleanor, my wife. She sang the same one. At the hospital, when I thought I'd lost everything." For a moment, silence. Then David says quietly, "Maybe songs find the people who need them most." The words rattle Alexander long after they reach the mansion. Another afternoon, a board meeting runs late. By the time Alexander emerges, his shoulders sag. David opens the car door and murmurs, "Eat something first. Long day behind you, longer ahead." Alexander blinks. How did you know I skipped lunch? David shrugs. You get sharp when you're hungry, shorter with people. Same way you looked years ago. Alexander freezes. Years ago? We've only just met. David clears his throat. I mean, men like you. I've driven enough to see the signs. But Alexander feels the words like a tremor underfoot. In the weeks that follow, little things accumulate. David always seems to know the fastest detours, not from GPS but from memory. He carries an old scar along his forearm, visible when his sleeve rides up. Alexander catches sight of it one evening and stares, unsettled, though he can't place why. Once, in a moment of unusual openness, Alexander admits, I almost died once. Years ago. Car accident. Storm on Mulholland. I don't even remember how I got out. David's hands tighten on the wheel. His jaw works, but he says nothing. Strange. Alexander murmurs, half to himself. I never knew who pulled me from that wreck. David keeps his eyes fixed on the road. Sometimes saving doesn't need a name. At church one Sunday, Naomi, Alexander's goddaughter, convinces him to attend. The pastor reads from Hebrews 13 verse 2. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some have entertained angels without knowing it. Alexander stiffens. That verse again, Eleanor's favorite, now echoing as David bows his head silently beside him. Later, in the car, Alexander asks, Do you believe that? Entertaining angels without knowing it. David's voice is low, steady. I believe some strangers are sent to remind us who we are, to give us a second chance. Alexander's chest tightens. And you? Which are you? David glances in the mirror. That's for you to decide, sir. The staff notice changes. Mr. Cole's calmer lately. The butler whispers. Even smiles on occasion. Because of the driver? A maid asks skeptically. Because of something, the butler replies. And I think it rides in the front seat. One rainy evening, as thunder shakes the mansion windows, Alexander sits in his study staring at Eleanor's old Bible. His eyes land on a verse underlined in her hand. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers. He closes his eyes, whispering into the dark. Eleanor, what are you trying to tell me? Who is he? From outside, headlights sweep across the drive. David waits patiently by the car, umbrella ready, eyes steady as always. And Alexander cannot shake the feeling that the man standing in the rain is no coincidence. That somehow, someway, this stranger has been here before. The whispers begin in the boardroom. Alexander sits at the head of a polished table, screens flashing quarterly numbers. Profits are strong, yet the director's eyes are fixed on him, or rather, on the man who now drives him everywhere. Finally, one clears his throat. Mr. Cole, about your new hire. Alexander raises an eyebrow. David. Yes. The man shifts uncomfortably. A homeless man? As your chauffeur? Investors are concerned. Another director leans in. It sends a message of instability, recklessness. The press already buzzes about it. Alexander's jaw tightens. He does his job better than anyone I've had. A woman snaps. That's not the point. It's image. You're attaching your name to someone with no background checks, no record of stability. What if he steals? What if he snaps? Alexander's voice is cold. What if he's more loyal than any of you? The boardroom falls silent. But the seed of doubt has been planted. The headlines come days later. Billionaire hires homeless stranger off the street. Is Alexander Cole losing his grip? Chauffeur or charity case? Cameras flash outside the mansion gates. Paparazzi shout questions whenever the car pulls up to events. David keeps his head down, jaw clenched, but Alexander sees the tension in his shoulders. One evening, Naomi, Alexander's goddaughter, peers through the curtains. They're treating him like he's a criminal. Alexander mutters. The world fears what it doesn't understand. Naomi looks at him squarely. Do you? The question stings. At a gala, murmurs follow him through the hall. Old acquaintances approach with forced sympathy. Alexander, One man says delicately, "We're worried. This is a driver. People say you're slipping. That grief has clouded your judgment." Alexander bristles. "My judgment is sound." "Hiring a homeless man to drive you?" The man presses. "That's not sound. It's sentiment." Alexander turns sharply, leaving his glass untouched. But the accusation gnaws at him. Back in the car, David senses the storm. "They're talking, aren't they?" Alexander exhales. "They always talk." David glances in the mirror. "And you? Do you believe them?" Alexander hesitates too long. "I don't know." The silence that follows is heavier than any traffic jam. That night, in the mansion, Alexander sits alone in his study. Eleanor's Bible lies open on the desk, her handwriting underlining Hebrews 13 verse 2. "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some have entertained angels without knowing it." He whispers bitterly, "Am I entertaining an angel, Eleanor, or am I entertaining madness?" Outside, rain lashes the windows. In the garage, David quietly wipes down the car, unaware of the questions raging inside the man he serves. The staff begin to waver. "He's polite, yes," one maid says. "But do we really know him?" The butler frowns. "I know the master smiles more these days. Or maybe he's just deluded." Another mutters. Rumors spread, doubt thickens. Even Naomi overhears and asks softly, "Uncle Alex? Is it true? Do you think you made a mistake?" Alexander pulls her close, but his eyes betray uncertainty. One late night, after a brutal meeting with investors threatening to pull funds, Alexander collapses into the back seat. His voice is low, raw. "David, tell me the truth. Who are you, really?" David's hands tighten on the wheel. His jaw clenches. "Just a man trying to do right. Why do I feel like I've seen you before?" Alexander presses. David doesn't answer. The silence is deafening. And in that silence, Alexander's doubts roar louder than ever. The pressure mounts with each passing day. Investors grow restless. The media grows cruel. And Alexander feels himself unraveling under the weight of whispers. One evening, after a brutal confrontation with the board, Alexander storms into the car, slamming the door harder than he intends. David starts the engine, eyes forward, saying nothing. The silence is suffocating. Finally, Alexander snaps. "Tell me, David, why shouldn't I listen to them? Why shouldn't I cut you loose before this destroys everything I've built?" David's knuckles whiten on the wheel, but his voice stays calm. "Because you know in your gut I've done nothing but serve you well." Alexander glares at the back of his head. "Serving well isn't enough. I need to know I can trust you. And right now, I don't know." The words hang in the air like a sentence passed. David exhales slowly. "If you doubt me that much, sir, maybe you should let me go." The car hums down the freeway, but inside, the quiet is deafening. That night, David packs his small duffel bag in the garage apartment. A few spare clothes, his worn Bible, nothing more. Naomi catches him. "You're leaving." He nods quietly. "Your uncle doesn't need the trouble I bring." Naomi's eyes brim with tears. "But he smiles with you. He hasn't smiled since Aunt Eleanor died. Please, don't go." David crouches to her level. "Sometimes leaving is the kindest thing." She shakes her head fiercely. "No, sometimes staying is." Her words pierce him. Meanwhile, Alexander paces in his study, Eleanor's Bible open before him. His eyes blur as he reads the verse she underlined so often. "Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some have entertained angels without knowing it." He slams the book shut. "Stranger, angel, liar, which are you, David?" He pours a drink but doesn't touch it. Instead, he buries his head in his hands. His empire is shaking, his reputation collapsing. And all because of one man he picked off the street. But beneath the rage, a quieter voice whispers, "Or because of one man you were meant to find." The next morning, David stands by the car in uniform one last time. "Mr. Cole," he says evenly, "I'll drive you today, but after that I'll be gone." Alexander stiffens. So you quit. David meets his eyes in the mirror. I release you. The words cut deeper than any resignation letter. They drive in heavy silence through Los Angeles. At a stoplight, Alexander finally blurts, "Why do I feel like you're hiding something from me?" David's jaw works. Because some truths come at the right time. And maybe you're not ready. Alexander's temper flares. Don't talk to me like a child. If you know something about me, say it. David's eyes flick to the road. One day, when it matters. For now, all I can tell you is this. I'm not here by accident. The light changes. The car rolls on. That evening, Naomi finds Alexander in the study. Her voice is soft but steady. "Uncle Alex, if you let him go, you'll regret it." Alexander shakes his head. "You don't understand." "I understand enough," she insists. "Sometimes God sends people before we know why. Aunt Eleanor used to say that, remember?" He freezes. Eleanor had said those exact words. Naomi whispers, "What if David's not just a driver? What if he's the answer to her prayers?" Alexander's breath shudders. In the garage, David shoulders his bag. Rain begins to fall, thunder rolling over the city. He pauses, looking up at the mansion, the place that gave him shelter, the man who gave him work, the child who begged him to stay. He whispers a prayer. "Lord, if I was sent here for more than this, show him before it's too late." Inside, Alexander stares out the window at David walking toward the gate. His chest tightens with something stronger than fear. The ache of losing someone he doesn't yet understand. He whispers into the night, "Eleanor, am I about to send away the miracle you left me?" The storm answers with a crack of thunder. And for the first time, Alexander realizes the test is not about David. It is about him. Rain lashes the streets of Los Angeles, blurring headlights into rivers of light. David walks steadily toward the gate, duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Each step feels final, yet his heart whispers that this story is not finished. Inside the mansion, Alexander stands frozen at the window. Naomi's words echo in his mind. What if David's not just a driver? What if he's the answer to her prayers? He can't let him go. Not yet. "David!" Alexander's voice booms across the drive as he bursts from the front door, coat flapping in the storm. David turns, startled. Alexander strides toward him, rain soaking his suit. "Before you leave, tell me the truth. Who are you to me?" David's jaw tightens. He looks away, as if weighing whether the truth is a gift or a burden. Finally, he says quietly, "Mulholland Drive. 10 years ago. Stormy night. Do you remember?" Alexander's breath catches. The accident. The skid on wet asphalt. The crash into the guardrail. The world spinning. Then darkness. He nods slowly. I remember waking up outside the car. Air in my lungs. Sirens in the distance. But no one ever told me who pulled me out. David meets his eyes. "I did." The words hit like a lightning strike. For a moment, Alexander can't breathe. The storm roars around them, thunder cracking overhead, but his world narrows to the man standing before him. "You?" he whispers hoarsely. David nods. "I was driving a delivery truck that night, saw your car spin out, climbed down the embankment, pulled you free before the fire spread." Alexander staggers back. "Why didn't you say anything before?" David's voice is steady but low. "Because it wasn't about thanks. It was about doing what was right. I didn't know your name. Didn't matter. You were just a man who needed saving." Alexander's eyes blur with tears. "And all these years, I never knew." The weight of revelation crashes over him. His wife's verse, Eleanor's whispering faith, Naomi's plea. All of it threads together into one undeniable truth. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, because sometimes strangers are not strangers at all. Alexander grips David's shoulders. Eleanor was right. She always said God sends people when we least expect. And he sent you twice, once to save my life and once to save my soul. David's eyes glisten. "I'm no angel, sir. Just a man trying to do right." Alexander shakes his head fiercely. "You're more than that. You're my miracle. Naomi runs out into the rain, her small frame shivering. Did you tell him? She asks breathlessly. David nods. Alexander pulls her close with one arm, David with the other. He saved me, Naomi, long before we met him at the car lot. He saved me. Naomi beams through tears. Then Aunt Eleanor was right. She said God answers prayers in his own time. Alexander kisses her forehead, then looks back at David. You're not leaving. Not now. Not ever. I won't let you walk out of my life again. David hesitates, emotion breaking through his calm. Slowly he nods. The storm softens as if the heavens themselves release their tension. Rain falls gently now, washing the drive clean. Inside, by the fire, Alexander pours 2 glasses of water, not brandy, not champagne. Simple, humble. He hands one to David. To second chances, Alexander says, voice trembling. David clinks the glass lightly. And to promises kept. They drink. That night, alone in his study, Alexander opens Eleanor's Bible again. Her underlined verse glows in the lamplight. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some have entertained angels without knowing it. He whispers into the quiet, Eleanor, I entertained an angel, and his name is David. Tears stream down his face, but they are no longer bitter. They are healing. The miracle is revealed, and nothing will ever be the same again. The morning after the storm, the mansion feels different. Not just dry and clear, but lighter, as though years of grief have been lifted from its walls. David pulls the car to the front as always, but Alexander waves him off. Not today. David frowns. Sir. Alexander shakes his head, smiling faintly. No, sir. Not anymore. Today you sit with me. They drive together, side by side this time, Alexander at the wheel for once. The city rolls past. The same streets that once felt like a battlefield now shimmer like new ground. At a red light, Alexander glances at David. All these years I thought survival was my own doing, but the truth is, I'm only here because of you. I built an empire on borrowed breath. David shifts uncomfortably. You don't owe me anything. I didn't save you for payback. Alexander nods. Which is why I owe you everything. That afternoon, Alexander calls a press conference at company headquarters. Cameras swarm, reporters jostle. The board expects damage control. Instead, Alexander steps to the podium with David beside him. I've been asked why I hired a man from the street, Alexander begins. They call it reckless, sentimental, even dangerous. The room buzzes. But what they don't know, he continues, voice steady, is that this man saved my life years ago, and without him, none of you would even know my name. Gasps ripple. Reporters scribble furiously. Alexander places a hand on David's shoulder. His name is David Johnson. He is not a liability. He is my brother. And from this day forward, he is not just my chauffeur. He is my family. Flashes explode. Questions fly. But Alexander feels a peace he has not known in years. The days that follow bring backlash and praise in equal measure. Some call it madness, others call it miracle. Investors threaten, then relent as the story captures public imagination. Headlines shift. Billionaire reveals secret savior. Homeless man turned chauffeur turned brother. Hospitality that changed a life. Naomi beams whenever she hears the reports. See, Uncle Alex? Aunt Eleanor was right. Life in the mansion transforms. David no longer sleeps in the garage quarters. Alexander insists he move into a guest suite. First, David resists. I don't belong in that wing. Alexander replies firmly. You belong wherever family belongs. Gradually, the house breathes again. David helps Naomi with homework, teaches her chess, shows her how to change a tire. Alexander joins them in the garden, planting violets in Eleanor's memory. The home that once echoed with grief now rings with laughter, prayer, and the smell of home-cooked meals David insists on making when the cook is away. Together, they launch the Cole and Johnson Initiative, a foundation dedicated to giving jobs and training to the homeless. David speaks at the first ceremony. His words are simple but powerful. I was given a chance when no one else looked at me twice. Now we'll give that chance to others. Because sometimes a driver is more than a driver. Sometimes a stranger is more than a stranger. Sometimes it's family. Applause thunders. Alexander watches with pride, his heart swelling. One evening, after a long day, Alexander and David sit on the mansion balcony, city lights stretching beneath them. Alexander raises a glass of water, their quiet ritual. To strangers who become brothers, David clinks his glass softly. And to second chances, they drink, silence settling comfortable between them. In the library, Eleanor's Bible remains open on its stand. Naomi points to the verse underlined in her handwriting. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some have entertained angels without knowing it. She grins. Looks like Aunt Eleanor knew what she was talking about. Alexander chuckles, tears in his eyes. She always did. David smiles quietly. And maybe she knew I'd be back. For the first time in years, Alexander does not feel like a man haunted by loss. He feels like a man restored. His empire is no longer just wealth. It is legacy, built not on numbers, but on lives saved, bonds formed, promises kept. The mansion glows that night not with gold, but with something far rarer. Family. Years turn like pages in a book. What began on a rain-soaked night with a stranger at the wheel becomes a story told in boardrooms, shelters, and family dinners. Alexander grows older, silver streaking his hair, his once rigid shoulders softened by time and gratitude. David, too, carries more gray in his beard, but his posture remains steady, his eyes calm. Together they remain inseparable. Billionaire and chauffeur, employer and employee no longer, now simply brothers. The Cole and Johnson initiative expands beyond Los Angeles. Training centers open in San Francisco, Chicago, New York. Job programs for the homeless multiply, pairing skills with dignity. At each ribbon cutting, David insists on staying in the background, but Alexander pushes him forward. He saved me, Alexander tells every crowd. Not once, but twice. First from death, then from despair. If you honor me, honor him. David bows his head, embarrassed but moved. Naomi grows into adulthood under their watch. Where once she peeked nervously through curtains, now she commands stages. She becomes the foundation's public voice, speaking with fire inherited from Eleanor. My aunt believed in showing kindness to strangers, she tells audiences. But I've seen what happens when kindness comes back full circle. My uncle showed hospitality and discovered a brother. That is the miracle we now share with the world. Applause thunders. Alexander weeps openly, David's hand steady on his shoulder. At home, life is simple and rich. Mornings bring shared breakfasts around the table. Afternoons find David teaching Naomi to drive on the quiet lanes of the estate. Evenings fill with music. Alexander at the piano, Naomi singing, David humming low. The mansion, once mausoleum, has become a sanctuary. Inevitably, time brings partings. One evening, Alexander lies in bed, Eleanor's Bible at his side. David sits nearby as steadfast as ever. Alexander's voice is weak but peaceful. I thought wealth was my security, but the truth is you've been my brother all along. David's eyes glisten. And you've been mine. Alexander smiles faintly. Promise me you'll keep the work alive. David squeezes his hand. With Naomi at the helm, it will outlive us both. Alexander exhales softly, eyes closing. Then I can rest. He slips away as gently as rain falling on violets. The funeral draws crowds from across the world. Politicians, business magnates, and ordinary men and women whose lives were touched by the foundation gather. But at the graveside, it is David who speaks last. I was a stranger when we met, he says, voice steady. But Alexander Cole showed me hospitality, and in return we became family. His wealth was vast, but his love was greater. That is the legacy I will carry. The crowd bows their heads, many in tears. Years later, Naomi leads the foundation with bold vision. David remains by her side as mentor and guardian. She often quotes Eleanor's verse at events. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some have entertained angels without knowing it. Then she adds, I grew up watching what happens when a stranger becomes family. It's not just a verse. It's my life. In the foundation's headquarters, a wall of portraits hangs. Eleanor with violets in her arms, Alexander at the podium beside David, and Naomi addressing a sea of children and workers. Beneath them, carved in stone, are words that outlive them all. Strangers are just family you haven't met yet. At twilight, in the quiet garden of the mansion, David tends the violets Eleanor once planted. His beard is fully white now, his hands weathered. Naomi joins him, kneeling at his side. Uncle David, she says softly, do you ever regret the life you lost before all this? David smiles, shaking his head. How can I regret a path that led me here? God turned a broken road into a bridge. And across that bridge, I found family. Naomi takes his hand, tears shining. And I found mine. They sit in silence as the sun dips low, the violets swaying in the evening breeze. And though Alexander is gone, his laughter seems to linger, carried on the wind, entwined forever with Eleanor's faith and David's quiet strength. The miracle continues. And so, what began with a chance encounter at a car lot became a story of revelation, redemption, and family. Alexander Cole believed he was hiring a stranger to fill a vacancy. He discovered instead that this stranger had once pulled him from death itself. David Johnson believed he was taking just another job. Instead, he found a brother, a home, and a mission greater than either man could have imagined. And through it all, Eleanor's favorite verse proved true. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by so doing some have entertained angels without knowing it. Hebrews 13 verse 2. This is the truth their lives proclaim. Sometimes the people we overlook are the very ones who hold our salvation. Sometimes kindness to a stranger is not charity, but destiny. And sometimes family is not given by blood, but chosen by grace. So if you see a stranger, if you feel the nudge to open a door, share a meal, or extend a hand, remember Alexander and David. Remember that miracles often walk toward us disguised as need, because what looks like hiring a chauffeur may be entertaining an angel, and that is a story worth living.